welcome to the Next Best Picture podcast. I am Matt Neglia, and I'm being joined right now by the sound team for A Complete Unknown. We have Supervising Music Editor Ted Caplan.
Hey there.
Sound Mixer Todd Maitland.
Hello.
Re-recording mixer Paul Massey.
Hi there.
And Supervising Sound Editor Donald Sylvester.
Hello.
All right, gentlemen, let's break this one down, because when it comes to Bob Dylan, it's all about the music. It's all about the sound going from acoustic to electric. So your role in this is extremely pivotal in not only capturing Bob Dylan as a musician, but then also too, you also have to capture the sounds of Greenwich folk New York during a time that honestly is like one of those, like, people talk about it though as if it's like mythical. You know, it's a very, very special and unique time in New York City history and music history. So let's dive right in here. I don't even know where to start, actually, because there's so many ways that we can go. But why don't we do this? Why don't we start off with, in terms of recording Timothy and capturing the voice as well as the sounds up on stage, how did you guys go about that approach here? Because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of unique elements at play, but his performance is one that also has to be captured through its sound.
I'll start with that since I started early. Yeah, I mean, basically from the very beginning, we always looked at this thing like, again, we were capturing a piece of history. We were making an album. Every day I went to work, I felt like I was working on an album, and we found so many creative ways to mic the situation. So every one of those venues uses a different vintage microphone, a real microphone. So we had over 45 real microphones used, and each one of them was different for each venue, just to create a different texture and a different sound for each venue. And then when Timmy would play in a non-performance piece, we found that the only way to really mic him and make it work would be to put a lavalier in his hair, aiming straight down over his mouth down to the guitar, and it created a really great mix. The scene that you see in the Gaslight is all done with that one microphone over him.
Wow.
And then just recording all of the ambiances. And one of the things that I really like to do is record as many different things as I possibly can. So what you're saying about Greenwich Village, we had all those cars going, we had musicians playing, and we captured all that live. That's the way Jim works. Jim wants that live energy, and he wants it for the actors, and he wants it for himself. He would have me do mixes, just my temp mixes, to what he wanted to hear in the film, so that would be what would kind of move forward until it got to post. And just to create that energy for the actors, I think brought so much life to it. So that life that you saw in Greenwich Village, it was really happening. They were playing guitars. They were playing Puff the Magic Dragon. Whenever we walked by a music venue, we would have a speaker down in the venue, and we'd be playing music out of that venue. And then other people would be singing on the streets, and then cars. So we had microphones out for all the vintage cars going by. So it really was this beautiful cacophony of sound all mashed together, and I tried to separate it out on as many possible tracks as possible for when it goes to post, because then they have to really dissect it and pull it apart as they did.
Yeah,
And not to mention too, in post, talk about crunch. I still don't know how you guys managed to get this thing ready. By the time I saw it, it hasn't come out officially yet as of this recording, but I mean, you talk about a tight turnaround here for such an ambitious project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Todd's obviously on during the entire production, but for Jim, it's not unusual for someone like Dawn and I to come on during production as well, and him to be fine cutting picture while they're shooting. Mm-hmm. So Drew and Scott are cutting picture. Dawn and I are providing sound and music edits. It's almost like, I don't want to say it's real time, because it's not, but it's a really accelerated process, partly because we all know each other. We've worked together for so long. There's a real shorthand, and so we can get to the heart of the matter quickly rather than waiting to find the movie later and kind of like work a slow process. So even though the schedule was, no, we don't always want to work at this speed. It was benefited that we had all worked together so much, and we knew Jim's process and had a sense of his aesthetic.
Yeah, I don't think we could have done this if we had waited for production to wrap. Um, and that's not Jim's style either. I mean, he basically wants us to sort of do our version of the movie and present it to him. We'll put our best foot forward and we'll do what we think is what he wants. And after working with him for a long time, sometimes we get it right. Um, so we'll get at least in the right direction. And so then he'll have the scene that he watches at night, in between days that he's shooting, and he'll give us direction, and we'll keep going. So by the time the production is wrapped, we have made a pass of the whole film. And it literally is, he wraps on Thursday. We show him the film on Monday.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a long weekend, but it does sort of allow you to make giant leaps forward. And he's going to be involved sooner than later anyway. So it worked out just fine.
So one of the things that I noticed about this film that I greatly appreciated was how grounded it is within reality. There's no psychedelic drug fueled LSD trips. There's no moments of like fantastical sound to accentuate something that doesn't just sound believable to the regular human ear. So when given that kind of, like I said, grounded approach to capturing Bob and his music and telling it with as much authenticity as possible. Do you guys find that limiting or freeing? Like how do you view that kind of approach?
I think that's tremendously freeing, to be honest. I mean, Jim always wants real. He doesn't want plastic. He never wants us to touch up or sweeten and make it fake. He'll catch that in a millisecond. So the fact that everything was live, the fact that all the singers sang live and played their instruments live, and Todd did such a great job capturing all of that, it gives us those little moments where we're not trying to reenact Bob Dylan's life or a concert or a song, and nor is Timothy trying to do that either in his performance. We're trying to capture all the little string buzzes that might have happened right at that moment, just in that one take, or a slight flub on a piano, or an increase in speed in the song. That's all live. That was all happening as the location shoot was happening. And that's, I think, what gives the film such a grounded feel. And the fact that Jim also embraces that. He wants that in every aspect of what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say Jim's a kind of analog guy.
Yeah.
I don't. He has a really great record collection, and I don't think he listens to CDs or anything like that, or MP3s, or I mean, he just likes the notion of things in the '60s were just real. And we get to pull out the old phones and the old typewriters and the old cars, and things that you can't use in today's modern story, and everybody's on their cell phone. And we just it just sort of is a Foley driven world for Jim, where if you touch it, you hear it, and if it's not in the room, it's not going to be heard. So yeah, he's good at that.
And from the music side of things, there's a little bit of score. We use like some guitar. There are some guitar pieces used as score in the movie. A great example of where Jim will just drill into something, because they may be simple. The number of times we have to go back and do it again because he thinks the guitar sounds like it belongs in a Starbucks. I mean, that was always the thing. Like, you hear this in Starbucks. He wanted something that sounded raw and immediate and authentic. And he's like, this is a Bob Dylan movie. We're not making a rom-com. It was maniacal, and it took over and over iterations to get the exact sound. It may sound, it'll blow by everybody, but it makes a difference, because you don't then suddenly feel like you're in a construction. You're not into something superficial or sentimental or just what you call too much of a movie. You're in something that's an experience that you're witnessing. And by just being attuned to those details, I think he brings out you're reading the aesthetic he's trying to achieve, which is something that feels really no bullshit.
Yeah, and Matt, I
It,
think it's a great observation on your part because really, I think, the whole idea of this film was to make it real, make it live. It is music driven. There is no sparkle elsewhere, and a testament to my partners here because so many films that I've worked on, because I record the raw stuff. I know what's there. I know what's going into it, and so many times it comes out with sparkle and pushed in so many different directions. But this one came out so real and so great. It was such a great mix on the end. Really, really great.
Yeah, because also too, you have to find that fine line between how do I give this a grit while also not bleeding the ears of the listener, and that's a tough balance to strike, I think sometimes. Um, what is the secret to capturing an authentic large crowd?
Lots of microphones. Lots of on my end, lots of microphones on their end, augmenting what I captured, I think.
Well,
But
because
everything's live.
because
We did,
there are scenes in this movie where the crowd is on Bob's side, and then there is one very memorable scene where they are certainly not.
yeah,
that
the
was all
crowd's a
real. That all
character.
happened. That all happened as we did it. That last scene that you see, that 1965 Newport, we did as one giant scene from when the railroad gang comes out until Bob walks off stage and the final group come out to sing their farewell. That was done as one 23-minute take with audience absolutely interactive throughout the entire thing. And we just had microphones everywhere, on everybody in the audiences for the speakers. It was as live can be.
So what is the process then when you have all of those recordings? Do you play them all at once and then say, okay, we're going to bring this down, we'll bring this down, and eventually you find a balance somewhere? Like how does that work?
There's really there's really many layers of that crowd. Obviously, there's the layer of the real crowd there on that day, which um, I went through and I created a bunch of sort of crowds that were very vocal, but I had to remove some music in it because there was some music bleed through. But we used that as sort of a basis, and then we added library sounds because there were not 15,000 people there. There's considerably less. And
Yeah.
choosing your library sounds, you'd have to do it judiciously because you don't want to. It doesn't sound like a baseball game. It doesn't sound like a parade. I mean, these things have to be meticulously done. And then there's crowds that we add on top, where we take some actors and we put them in a room and we have them emote as if they're in the scene. And then we do the layering, which Paul does. Um, but at the same time, we basically have a script for this crowd and what they're saying and what when they're saying it, and we had to write um, lines of dialogue for what they say in the crowd, and we had to present that to Jim, and Jim would say, want him to say that, and want him to say that, want him to say that, or her to say that, and so all of these elements had to be mixed together and follow a script that Jim knew basically more than anybody else, and he would direct us where it happened. And then good luck to Paul. Paul had to then juggle all these plates and make it work, Paul.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, in those sequences, what Todd had recorded obviously was a massive foundation for the reactions that Jim was wanting at the time on when he shot the sequences, and the fact that they'd done 23-minute takes from top to bottom was tremendously helpful in finding out what the crowd should be doing. So we used all of that, or as much as we possibly could, and then, like Don said, we supplemented with library crowd, but also a lot of specific group recording for shout outs and call outs that Jim was requested in terms of steering the crowd onto Bob's side or away from Bob. And then, during those sequences, that is a character. The crowd becomes a character within the event, within the Newport 65, but it's not always the leading character. So there's the music that has to be dominant and driving and building throughout. and the crowd supplements when it can and then takes over when it needs to. But there's a lot of the constant crowd you need to diminish quite significantly and give the illusion of crowds shout outs and call outs that are being heard, and therefore there are 15,000 people still there. But in the mix itself, you need to diminish all of that, otherwise you lose all the detail in the music. So it's a lot of give and take, and it depends greatly on what the music's doing, how loud that is, what the instrumentation is, and also how you meet the music with the crowd in between songs. So yeah, it takes a while.
It's a dance.
So as we come close to the end here, I understand the post-production process. Like I said, if you guys didn't have the efficiency of Mangold and the shorthand, probably would have been a very, very tough task. But what would you say was the most challenging yet rewarding element of working on A Complete Unknown?
Oh, I mean, for me, it was I've worked on a lot of movies with Jim, and a bunch of things. I've never had 130 song starts to manage and kind of figure out. And we're talking, all the live performances, which include, Timmy noodling on the bed while Sylvie's leaving. Everything is, we're managing so many little moments. This isn't just about the stage performances. When they sing on the bed, it's a big thing. When he's figuring out a song in a desk, everything is, we get the same attention to those scenes that we do to the big scenes, and just shepherding something of that scale that feels, I'd like to think it feels a little effortless. You're not going, oh, another song, oh, here's some more, here's another big number. It's just, you're just immersed in this world of music that Todd recorded so beautifully and Paul mixed so beautifully and Don provided the world, that it all just feels like you're witnessing something happen rather than just watching a movie.
I'd say every day was challenging and every day was rewarding. I would leave every day, with a smile on my face, knowing what we captured and knowing how everybody else contributed to the film. Every department throughout on the entire film really put 110% into it. When you're working on something good, and all professionals know when they're working on something good, and they kick in, and everybody did on this film across the board. It was a very rewarding. And as you said, it is one of the most complicated, challenging, and rewarding films that I've ever done by far.
I'm going to add that I got kind of a kick out of Timothy. I knew he was a talent. I knew he was deeply invested, but I didn't know he was that good. I didn't know he was going to be able to carry this film the way he did, and I didn't know he could sing and play like that. And the fact that he could, and he could do it effortless. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Thank you. He could, and he did, and I was very impressed with him.
Well, I think just all of us collectively paid such attention to detail, and we were on such a shortened schedule that every day was rewarding, every day was a race, every day was a panic. But it was ultimately very, very rewarding when we got very close to the end of the mix time and the deliverables, and realizing what we'd all collectively accomplished. And we were all very, very proud of it. So I'd say possibly the best part of the film was getting to the end.
Oh, you're supposed to say the best part was working with all you guys. Come
well,
on.
the best part, apart from working with all you guys and working with Jim and making the commute every day and all of that stuff, yeah, the best part was getting to the end.
The best part was the a complete in the title, fulfilling
Right?
its
Yes.
There you go.
Well,
And so I know this is always a tricky question sometimes for some people, but as we wrap up here, are you guys allowed to share where we could hear your work next? If you can't, I understand, but if you're allowed to say what you're working on, we would love to know.
I'm actually right at lunch break working on the Bruce Springsteen film, Deliver Me from Nowhere.
Very excited to see what Jeremy Allen White does with that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
can't wait.
it's good. It's very different from this film. Very interesting.
Yeah.
and I'll be joining that production as well once Todd is finished with it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be jumping over to The Wrecking Crew, which is this Jason Momoa movie over at Amazon, but that'll be in a few months.
Cool.
And I am proudly sitting at home on my couch. I design.
We're all jealous.
I have decided to take a few months off, and we'll see what happens. It's okay with me.
I believe.
Hey, well-deserved break. The work here is fantastic, guys. It sounds great, captures the era so well, and I think people are going to absolutely love falling in love with Bob's music and just this era of great folk all over again. So credit to all of you. Thank you all so much for your time here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Man.
Take care.